Politics, just the mere mention of the word, can provoke a negative reaction from many people. As America prepares for what could be one of the most important election years in history, why have so many people lost faith in politics, politicians, and the political process itself? Answers to this question and much more next on Campus Conversations. Welcome to Campus Conversations. I'm Steve Simon.
And I'm Fritzi Bodenheimer. With presidential elections on the horizon and so much at stake, why are so many Americans disengaged from the political process?
To discuss this issue, we're pleased to have with us three Montgomery College professors, one from each of our three campuses. Dr. Aram Hassami is a political science professor at the Rockville campus. Dr. Francine Jamin, who is based at the Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus. She is the director of the college's Paul Peck Institute for American Culture and Civic Engagement. And Dr. Joe Thompson of the Social Science Department at Montgomery College's Germantown campus. And we love to talk about having a different arrangement, but it's so much fun for us to have one of the great professors from all three of the campuses of Montgomery College. So welcome and thanks for joining us for today's discussion. I'll toss this out to whoever wants it first, and I'm sure that you might have some different theories, but we're at a very important time. We're starting to think about a presidential election. There's so much going on in our country, and yet it does seem, at least to me, from some perspectives, that people don't really like the political process itself. Aram, you want to take the first shot at that? Why do you think that is?
I'm sure that there is some truth in the statement, but I'm not sure that it is politics or what is political or partisan politics. The process has always been bloody. It's a full contact sport, I'm afraid to say. The only thing is that those people who are still naive to think that, oh, well, this is about justice or about doing the right thing, to them, they may be turned off. But to the rest of us who talk and write and follow politics, we know this is par for the course. Contact sports and what is permissible and what is not. So I don't think there's anything new under the sun, especially political game.
Yeah, it's not new at all. We've been fighting amongst ourselves ever since the first contested election, which was 1796.
But are we fighting, or are people just saying, you know, it's a messy thing. I don't believe any of them, and staying out of their role in the process? Well, I mean, by you know, losing trust in the political process or in the politicians.
Well, some are fighting more than others, and I recently read an article, and I don't remember the source, that said that the people of the United States are fairly in the middle. We're in the middle. It's the politicians and the parties that have become further apart from one another. And
you know, many people disagree with that and say that the problem, and one of the reasons people are not engaged, is that the parties are indistinguishable, that everybody's trying to move toward the center. Nobody wants to be called an extremist in any sense. Nobody wants to be called an extreme liberal or conservative. And one of the reasons I think that people are not engaged is that they can't really perceive a difference between the major parties.
I tend to agree with that. In general, one of the problems with the two-party system is that the choices, the parties in the United States are catch-all. Think of it as two great umbrellas, and then you get all these pluralist interest groups going under one or the other. So you have solidified the political culture and the dialogue into two separate camps, and sometimes you say, here's the choice between watermelon and honeydew, Bush or Kerry, what do you want? And so there are some people who are disenchanted. The Naderites would definitely agree with you, and especially the political process and apportionment and electoral college and winner takes all has everything to do with why, for example, the third parties in the United States don't do as well as their counterparts in Europe or other places do. So that's a problem.
And is it a problem across the board, or are young people more or less engaged or disengaged? And I'll just tell you briefly, I also teach classes here at the college, and a couple of years ago there was a women's rally on the Mall. There were something like 1 million people, great picture in the Post on Monday morning of people from the Capitol to the Monument, and I showed it to my class as an example of freedom of speech and all the great rights we have here. And a woman raised her hand in my class and she said, "What rally?" And I nearly, fell off the desk. So I'm wondering, I'm hoping she was not typical, but what do we know about young people and their involvement in the political process?
We know that statistically, people of the age of our students, the 18 to 22-year-olds, are the least involved across the age spectrum. I learned from the people in the League of Women Voters, who are a partner of the institute that I direct. The age at which the largest percentage of people vote is 75. And those are people who are, now for obvious reasons, these are people who have time to be informed about the process and get involved in the process. But it's our students, for a great variety of reasons, are not informed and not involved.
Well, they're working on other things.
Yeah.
They're working on their careers. They're working on creating families. And so to them, politics is something that doesn't necessarily affect them just yet. They don't fully appreciate the role that politics plays in their lives. And as we move through life, we become a little more engaged. And as you said, by the time someone's 75.
Aristotle claims that you need a large middle class to participate in politics. You make property laws low or qualifications so that everyone with a minimum property can participate in the Greek polis city-state. This is appropriate because if the age group you're targeting are students, then to what level do they have a stake in the system? During the 60s, and certainly when we made the change of voting right from 21 to 18, we tried to expand it so that maybe instead of protesting, they vote. I don't want to overemphasize the role of voting as a conventional participation, but non-conventional participation is quite high in America. Maybe 50% to 55% of people vote in America. I believe 2000 election, you had 101 million people voted, and 2004 election, general election, of course, you had 121 million people voted. But the range is 50 to 55 or so. It's high for the United States. You compare this with Iraq, first election, 68, 70% really voting, knowing that they may die. So there's not a burning issue out there to get them out, and they don't have a stake in the system, which will explain why people of age of 75 would participate, because Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, everything is bankrupt, the whole hell is breaking loose, so you vote. Therefore, they have a stake in the system.
Are we putting too much emphasis on voting as the measure
right.
of engagement? I mean, I think if I got it right, it used to be about 100% vote count in the Soviet Union,
right.
not necessarily, full civic engagement. Francine, I want to ask you, your Institute for American Culture and Civic Engagement, Paul Peck Institute for American Culture and Civic Engagement at Montgomery College, clearly is thinking about things like how to get students, young people, and people in our community active in the voting process, but civic engagement goes beyond voting. Talk a little bit about that.
A lot of civic engagement, as we see it, involves getting together with groups of people and exchanging ideas about issues, events, topics of interest to the community. We sponsor a Jefferson Cafe series of discussions at which we bring together each month a group of students, faculty, community people. Community people are about half the clientele at our Jefferson Cafes, to talk about issues that we think would convince people that they have some stake. It's not an advocacy kind of discussion. Nobody's saying, okay, where do we write letters to? What numbers do we call? It's more of a way of generating curiosity and enthusiasm for dialogue. Because people who are turned off, as we've all said, don't feel they have a stake. For example, we live in Maryland, a state with relatively few electoral votes, with an election outcome that is thought to be predetermined, with a relatively late primary, as everybody rushes to move up primaries. Many people sit back and think, by the time the candidate, I won't even get a chance to vote or get involved, and the candidate of my party will be chosen. This comes out in discussions at the Jefferson Cafe, where we consider things like the Electoral College and the prospects of reforming it, whether it needs to be reformed and how. Politics and ethics, topics like that.